In the dense Chipan forest, where sunlight breaks into golden fragments as it pierces the canopy of damp leaves, a presence moves without leaving a trace. It is not a sound, not a clear shadow, but an absence in motion. The Bengal tiger advances as if the forest had imagined it and then forgotten it. Its orange body, crisscrossed by perfect black lines, does not betray its form. It dissolves it. In this place where the vegetation closes in like a living wall, camouflage is not a color, it is a strategy. Each dark stripe blends with the shadows of the tree trunks. Each light area mimics the glimmers of sunlight that fall randomly. The tiger does not hide. It disappears. The Chipan jungle is not a passive stage. It breathes, it throbs, it moves. The humidity hangs in the air like an invisible weight. The ground is soft and treacherous, covered in leaves that crunch underfoot. For a predator that depends on absolute silence, each step is a negotiation with its surroundings. The tiger places its paws with the precision of an artisan. Its pads absorb the impact. Its flexible spine undulates with each stride. Its breathing synchronizes with the pulse of the forest. There is no hurry. Haste is noise, and noise is death for one who lives by surprise. A deer feeds a few meters away, plucking tender shoots that sprout among the exposed roots. It doesn't look back. The jungle has taught it to watch, but vigilance is not a guarantee, it's a probability. The tiger measures distance without moving its head. It calculates the angle, the wind direction, the moment the prey lowers its neck to bite another leaf. In the jungle, success depends not on brute force, but on the perfect instant. One mistake, one misstep, a rustling leaf, and the deer will vanish in a burst of movement that the tiger cannot sustain for long. Each failed attempt is an expenditure of energy that is not always recovered. When the attack comes, it's not a chaotic explosion, but a straight line drawn by taut muscles. The tiger accelerates silently, covers the distance in a flash, becomes a living projectile slicing through the humid air. The impact is precise, aimed at disabling the prey's body in the shortest possible time. There is no celebration, no roar. There is a held breath, a final adjustment of the bite, a body going still. Eating is not a triumph, it is continuity. In the Chipan forest, each meal is a balance between the life that is taken and the energy that is recovered. But the tiger is not just a hunter, it is a moving territory. An adult male roams tens of square kilometers, marking trees with deep scratches, leaving olfactory signals not meant to be seen, but rather read by other tigers. Each mark is an invisible border, a message declaring that this space belongs to someone. In an environment where dense vegetation limits visibility, scent is a language. The tiger writes its domain with secretions, with marks on the bark, with routes it repeats until they become its own trails. It doesn't patrol to show off, it patrols to remember and to be remembered. When another male crosses that boundary, the forest tenses. There are no prolonged warnings. The roars, when they occur, are the last frontier before the clash. Encounters between adult tigers are rare because they are costly. A broken canine, a deep wound, a slight limp can mean the loss of territory and, with it, access to sufficient prey. That is why when conflict erupts, it is swift and brutal. They do not fight for honor, they fight for future survival. The jungle observes without intervening. It does not take sides. It records the outcome in the distribution of tracks that will change location the next day. Behind the ghost of the forest lies another story, one that is rarely seen, that of the tigress who raises her cubs in silence. In a hollow protected by intertwined roots and moss-covered rocks, the mother curls around tiny bodies that breathe clumsily. The cubs are born blind, clumsy and dependent. Their world is the warmth of their mother's womb and the scent that anchors them to life. The tigress goes out to hunt, leaving her cubs in a stillness that is not absence but waiting. Each outing is a gamble. She must return with food and without revealing the hiding place. She changes dens when the risk increases, carefully dragging her cubs along, rewriting her secret map of the forest so that no predator or competitor can follow the trail. The Chipan forest is not only home to tigers, it is a web of prey, competitors, shadows that cross paths without ever touching. Wild boars root among roots, monkeys warn with sharp cries when they detect strange movement, birds take flight in sudden waves that betray the presence of something out of place in their rhythm. The tiger reads these signs like a moving text. A chorus of birds that erupts for no apparent reason is a warning. A sudden silence among insects is a dangerous boundary. The jungle speaks in the smallest changes. Those who don't learn that language won't last. In the clearings where the light is strongest, the tiger avoids exposure during the day. It prefers the hours when the forest becomes ambiguous, when contrasts deceive the eye. Dawn and dusk are its allies. At those edges of daylight, the jungle becomes a labyrinth of shifting shadows where camouflage is multiplied. The tiger stops to drink from puddles that reflect fragments of sky through the leaves. It drinks quickly, raises its head, listens. Water is a point of vulnerability. In the jungle, lowering one's guard for even a few seconds is like opening a door that doesn't always close in time. Beyond the tiger's territory, in distant rivers, other predators practice the same patience that defines the ghost of Chipan. Motionless crocodiles lie beneath murky surfaces, waiting for the precise moment when prey mistakes stillness for safety. The strategy is the same, even though the setting changes. Immobility as a weapon, time as an ally, surprise as a death sentence. Nature doesn't repeat forms, it repeats principles. On moonless nights, the tiger becomes almost invisible, even to those who think they know the forest. Its eyes reflect the meager available light, its body blending into the irregular geometry of trunks and vines. It moves forward without scratching leaves, without breaking branches. The jungle, accustomed to its passage, seems to open a corridor that closes behind it. The idea of the ghost is not a metaphor, it is the way the tiger exists in the landscape. It leaves no lasting trace. Its presence is detected only after it has passed. However, the reign of the tiger is not eternal. The boundaries of the Chipan forest have shrunk. Where the jungle once stretched uninterrupted, clearings now appear that defy the natural cycle, paths cut across ancient trails, and noises that don't belong to the forest's language. The jaguar avoids these new borders. He circles them, sniffs them, memorizes them as danger zones. The jungle that once made him a ghost now compels him to be more cautious. Each artificial boundary reduces the space where silence can endure. The tigress knows it when she chooses longer routes to bring food to her cubs. The male senses it when his markings become diluted in fragmented territories. The forest changes texture. Where there is less shade, there is less room to disappear. The ghost of the forest does not vanish of its own accord. It is forced to walk through narrower corridors where the noise of the outside world seeps in. Even so, as long as a continuous stretch of leaves, roots and shadows remains, the tiger will continue writing its story with silent footsteps. The Chipan forest will continue breathing in fragments of light, and in those fragments, the phantom will continue advancing. Each hunt will be a negotiation with energy, each mark on the bark a reminder that territory is not just a space, it is a relationship between a body and a landscape that learns to conceal it. The Chipan forest transforms as the day's heat melts and night begins to stitch shadows among the tree trunks. At that threshold, where sounds become clearer and the air drops only slightly, the jaguar becomes something even more elusive. By day, it's a secret. By night, it's a law. The jungle doesn't stand still, it reorganizes itself. The insects raise their chorus, the frogs occupy invisible puddles, the leaves brush against each other with a subtle music that can conceal a footprint or betray a presence. The tiger listens to this orchestra like a hunter who knows every instrument. At this hour, prey isn't hunted with just the eyes, it's tracked with the whole body. The tiger reads the damp scent of the earth, distinguishes fresh tracks from those already dissolved in mud, senses the direction of a breath of wind that seems non-existent but carries stories. The trail of a deer that passed minutes ago, that of a wild boar feeding near a clearing, that of another tiger that left its mark on a tree. The forest is a network of messages that are never seen, only felt. The deer that seemed confident at midday now moves with tension. Night changes its soul. It doesn't truly sleep. It fades for moments and then reignites its vigilance, as if exhaustion were yet another enemy. The tiger knows this. It doesn't attack when its prey is alert. It waits for the moment the deer's body relaxes, when it lowers its head for the third time, when its ears stop twitching with signs of paranoia. The tiger doesn't need many opportunities. It needs just one, and a perfect one. However, the forest also has rules that the tiger doesn't control. Sometimes the prey is saved not by force but by chance. A falling branch, a screaming monkey, a bird exploding in mid-flight upon sensing the predator's movement. The tiger may have the cleanest strategy, but the forest is not a static chessboard. A failed attack doesn't just mean hunger. It means the prey has learned, and prey that learns is faster, more wary, and more costly. That's why the tiger chooses with cold deliberation. It doesn't act impulsively. It weighs the cost. A long chase is a luxury, and in the jungle, luxury is paid for with days of fasting. When the tiger moves, it does so with complete intention. If it decides not to attack, that's also a victory. It conserves energy, maintains its advantage, lets the world keep turning until the odds tip in its favor again. Night falls, and in a stretch of forest where the ground becomes damper, the tiger stops. Before him is a narrow path marked by the repeated passage of animals, a natural corridor. There, the jungle opens up enough for the prey to feel safe, but close enough for the predator to hide. The tiger crouches. His muscles don't bulge, they tense up. He becomes a living stone. Minutes pass that feel like hours. A tiger's time isn't measured by clocks, it's measured by breaths. In the distance, the tiger hears the rustling of leaves, the snapping of small branches, the irregular rhythm of cautious footsteps. A wild boar appears from the vegetation. Its body is strong, compact, with tusks that can inflict a fatal wound if cornered. It's not the easiest prey, and yet for the tiger, the boar has something that makes it valuable. Its meat is concentrated energy, a reserve that can sustain it for more than a week if it manages to eat undisturbed. The tiger waits. It doesn't charge head-on. It looks for the right angle. The boar advances, sniffs, paws at the ground, becomes overconfident. And then what always happens when the jungle decides the end has come occurs. A swift movement, a blow that isn't fully seen, a muffled sound of a brief struggle. The tiger bites with precision, searching for the spot where the body shuts down most quickly. The boar tries to resist, to turn, to sink its tusks in, but the tiger doesn't fight for time. It fights for control. When it's all over, the forest returns to its usual murmur, as if nothing had happened. Only the metallic scent of blood mingling with dampness remains. But even a successful hunt is not a guarantee of safety. In Japan, the tiger is not alone on the mountaintop. There are rivals, there are scavengers, there are opportunists who don't hunt, but steal. The tiger drags its prey to a more hidden spot, among roots and deep shadows. It doesn't want the scent to spread, yet scent always travels, and in the jungle, scent is an invitation that someone will inevitably accept. In the distance, a deep sound is heard, almost a whisper from the forest. It could be the wind, it could be a large animal moving through the undergrowth. The tiger stops eating. It raises its head. Its ears point toward the source of the noise. Its eyes don't blink. It has learned that danger doesn't always arrive with roars. Sometimes it comes quietly. A young male, still reckless, dares to approach. Perhaps he didn't see the tiger, perhaps he saw it and took the risk anyway. In the world of big cats, youth makes mistakes because it doesn't yet know the true cost of an injury. The tiger doesn't move immediately. It observes. It lets the intruder understand what's happening through its body language. A sustained gaze, a minimal shift, a gesture that asserts dominance without physical contact. But if the intruder persists, the forest becomes an arena. There is no negotiation. The tiger rises with a frightening slowness. Not because it is slow, but because that slowness is control. A feline without control does not survive. The young one retreats. It understands the hierarchy, and it leaves. Territories are not always fought for with blood. Sometimes they are fought for with clarity. At other times, the threat doesn't come from another tiger, but from animals that know how to take advantage of death. Wild dogs, jackals, large birds, creatures that circle without attacking head-on, waiting for the tiger to tire or move away. But the greatest threat even here isn't an animal, it's time. Because the tiger can't keep its prey forever. The meat spoils, the scent lingers. The jungle attracts visitors, and the tiger, however much of a king he may be, can't defend an eternal feast without putting himself at risk. That's why it eats with disciplined urgency. It doesn't get distracted. It doesn't savor the meal. It replenishes itself. Then it moves away, letting the forest do its work with what's left. Scavengers, insects, bacteria. The tiger kills, but it doesn't destroy the system. It feeds a chain that existed before its species. The jungle transforms death into fertility. Nothing is truly wasted. Meanwhile, far from this scene, the tigress wages another kind of war. The war of raising her cubs undetected. In her den, the cubs have already opened their eyes. They observe everything with a mixture of curiosity and fear. They play at biting leaves, chasing each other in circles, and batting with their tiny paws as if practicing a battle they don't yet understand. The tigress watches them calmly, but her calm is a mask. Every sound outside the den could be an enemy. A male trying to kill cubs to force the female back into estrus. A human approaching without knowing what they're looking for. A feral dog, a competitor. Cubs aren't born ghosts. That's something they learn. The tigress begins to teach them without explicitly teaching, simply through actions. She compels them to stay still when she stops. She leads them along dense paths where her body easily disappears. She shows them how to lower their bodies, how to place their paws without crunching leaves, how to hide behind a tree trunk when something moves. Lessons aren't taught with words. They have consequences. One day, the tigress arrives with a small prey. She doesn't hand it over immediately. She lets it move, wounded, long enough for the cubs to chase it. At first, they are clumsy. They stumble. They lose their balance. They get frustrated, but this play is training. They learn to judge distances, to coordinate their legs, to use their bodies. In each failed attempt, a spark of skill is born. Over time, the tigress takes them further afield. She exposes them to new sounds, the calls of birds warning of danger, the movement of a wild boar, the pungent smell of a river. She teaches them that the forest's mood changes with the time of day, that there are places where the humidity masks scents and others where the wind carries them away like arrows, and that water can be both an ally and a trap. Because in Chipan, even drinking involves risk. The cubs grow, and their fur, still lighter than their mother's, begins to show more defined stripes. Each stripe is both an inheritance and a tool. With this pattern, the forest will grant them permission to disappear if they learn to move well. But the jungle is cruel to beginners. Many don't make it, not for lack of strength, but for mistakes, a mistimed noise, an unnecessary run, overconfidence. While the tigress trains her cubs, the male patrols his world with the obsessive vigilance of one who knows the kingdom is always at risk. The borders are not fixed. They shift with prey, with rivals, with the seasons. The tiger follows trails he retraces to reinforce his dominance. He scratches trees. He marks. He leaves signs. And on this journey, he sometimes finds something that doesn't belong in the forest. A strange scent, a human footprint, a metallic sound, a disruption in the natural order. The tiger stops. It doesn't approach out of naive curiosity. It approaches cautiously. It sniffs, it listens, it assesses. It has learned that humans are not prey, but rather a danger that doesn't behave like others. An animal rival announces itself with scent and presence. A human can be far away and still kill. It can leave invisible traps, ropes, metal hidden in the mud. The tiger doesn't understand technology, but it understands the pattern. Where there are human footprints, the risk increases. The Chipan forest silently is changing, and the tiger knows it because his life depends on reading changes before they become obvious. Where there were trails of prey, now there are empty spaces. Where there was shade, there are clearings that don't fill up quickly. Where the sounds of the forest once dominated, noises that don't belong now appear. The tiger remains a ghost, but the scene is becoming less conducive to his disappearance. Even so, on this particular night, in this stretch of jungle that still breathes strongly, the tiger reigns. It moves unseen, stops undetected, hunts unannounced. Its power lies not in roaring, but in making the forest feel whole when it is present, and strange when it is absent. Because a predator like this doesn't just kill, it organizes, it regulates. It maintains the balance of prey and runners. Its absence isn't noticed at first, but it is felt in the long run when populations explode, when the forest loses its ancient rhythm. And as the night continues, the tiger disappears once more among leaves and shadows, as if it had never been there. Only marks remain on a damp tree trunk, the faint scent that dissipates with the wind, and the certainty that, in Japan, the true ruler does not need to be seen to be real. Dawn doesn't enter the Japan forest as a clear light. It arrives in fragments, in golden slivers that filter through overlapping leaves, bounce off vines, shatter against moss-covered trunks, and fall to the ground in patches that seem to shift. The jungle awakens without the clang of a bell. It awakens in layers. First, the murmur of insects that never truly slept, then the calls of birds marking their territory. Afterward, the slow rustling of large bodies shifting positions in damp shelters. In this transition, the jaguar has already changed its plans. The night was for hunting, the day is for disappearing. The tiger doesn't rest where other animals do. It doesn't seek a comfortable spot, it seeks an invisible one. It slips into a corridor of dense vegetation, where the humidity keeps scents clinging to the ground and the wind disperses in unpredictable eddies. There, even a large predator can become nothing but a whisper. It lies down with its body aligned with the trunk of a fallen tree, its head barely raised to keep watch. Its eyelids close, but not completely. For a tiger, sleep is an intermediate state between alertness and oblivion. A limp muscle is an invitation to disaster. As the tiger settles into its watchful rest, the jungle teems with activity. The monkeys, which spent the night huddled high in the trees, now traverse the canopy like living bridges. Wild boars seek out areas disturbed by the rain where roots emerge. Deer approach brief clearings to snatch up new shoots before the sun scorches them. Everything moves with an urgency the tiger does not share. He knows that day is the realm of noise, night is the realm of others' mistakes. But Japan is not just about hunting and stealth. It's a web of encounters that rarely announce themselves. In a more open stretch of forest, a slow-moving river traces brown curves between exposed roots. The water isn't crystal clear. It carries leaves, sediment, stories. On the bank, hoofprints reveal recent visits. Drinking here is necessary but dangerous. The animals know this. They lower their heads, their bodies tense, ready to leap back if the water moves in a way that deviates from the river's normal pattern. The tiger also knows the river. It doesn't fear the water. It crosses it when necessary, swimming with a silent power that surprises those who underestimate it. But it doesn't drink without first reading the surface. It observes the apparent calm. It waits. The water can hide more than it reveals. In Japan, what seems still is often the mask of something that moves slowly. At a certain distance from the river, the forest thins. Irregular clearings appear where the ground receives more sunlight. These are transit zones for prey that prefer the brief morning light. They are also areas where the tiger's advantage is reduced. There, visibility exposes its size. In these spaces, the tiger becomes more cautious. It doesn't enter unless it has a clear reason. The phantom loses its power when the light is direct. That constant calculation, where to enter, where to wait, when to move, is what defines the tiger as more than just muscle. It's strategy applied to territory. Every step is an equation. Every rest is an investment in future survival. The tiger is not impulsive. The jungle punishes the impulsive. Elsewhere in the forest, the tigress changes dens, not because she's in immediate danger, but because repetition leaves its mark. Moving the cubs is a laborious ritual. Each one is carefully carried, one by one, in its mother's mouth. The journey isn't direct. The tigress zigzags, stops, listens, retreats if the wind carries unfamiliar scents. Changing dens is tiring, but staying put is deadly. The cubs, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, squeal with small sounds that the tigress silences with her presence. She doesn't need to bite. Her body commands stillness. When they reach the new refuge, a hollow among thick roots with a roof of fallen leaves, the tigress settles them and remains still for several minutes, listening to see if anyone has followed the trail. The jungle responds normally. That, for her, is a good sign. By mid-morning, the heat begins to drive activity into the shade. The tiger barely moves, adjusting its position. A cloud of insects passes like a curtain of living dust. The predator doesn't react. It has learned to let the world pass by without betraying it. To be invisible is not to be absent, it is to not interrupt. In Japan, the tiger isn't the only silent hunter. There are smaller felines that occupy the edges of the territory, birds that swoop down on tiny prey, snakes that wait patiently beneath damp leaves. The difference is that the tiger sets the map. Where it patrols, others adapt. Its routes influence the routes of others, not out of constant fear, but out of calculation. A corridor dominated by a tiger is a corridor with clear rules. Prey become more cautious, smaller predators become more opportunistic. The forest rearranges itself around its shadow. However, there are forces that the tiger cannot negotiate with: prolonged hunger and the loss of prey. When animal density decreases, the tiger must expand its range. This means crossing more open areas, approaching forest edges where noise is not part of the ecosystem. Each expansion increases the risk, not because the tiger loses its ability, but because the environment loses its coherence. At the edge of Japan, the forest gives way to a strip of sparse vegetation. The ground is drier, the smells change. Tracks appear that don't belong to wild animals, straight footprints, metal fragments, lines that cut across the natural path of prey. The tiger detects this anomaly without understanding its origin. It doesn't need to understand it. It registers it as danger. It moves with greater caution. It circles back. It prefers the interior of the forest, even if it means traveling farther to find food. Sometimes, prudence isn't enough. A hungry tiger might make decisions it wouldn't make in another context. Approaching areas where human noise coexists with easy prey is tempting. But Japan punishes those temptations with consequences that aren't always foreseeable. The tiger can't read traps designed for other kinds of intelligence. It can only read patterns, and human patterns change faster than those of the jungle. This morning, however, the tiger remains within its realm of shadows. The heat rises. The forest sweats, sounds muffle, the world seems suspended in a long breath. The tiger sleeps in short bursts. Each time it opens its eyes, the scene is still in place. That too is part of its power, choosing when to do nothing. In the afternoon, as the light begins to fade, the tiger rises, not yet to hunt. First, he patrols a section of his territory. He renews his markings. He inspects tree trunks. He reads messages left by others, the passage of a distant rival, the presence of prey that crossed at dawn, the faint scent of a wounded animal. The jungle is a chessboard that is rewritten every day. The tiger reviews it like a general reviews a map before moving troops. In a small clearing, he finds the tracks of a young deer. They aren't fresh, but they hold promise. The tiger memorizes the direction. He doesn't give chase immediately. He knows that prey have routines. They will return. They will return to the water. They will return to the tender shoot. The tiger's patience isn't passivity. It's an investment in probabilities. Further away, the tigress prepares the cubs for a subtle change, their first brief outing from the den. She doesn't take them far. She exposes them to the filtered light, to the ground that smells different from the den, to the real sounds of the forest. It's a short but crucial test. The cubs step on leaves, are startled by their own noise and retreat. The tigress observes them without intervening. Except when one strays too far. Then a firm touch brings one back to the center of the safe world. That afternoon, the cubs learn that the forest is not a friendly place. It's an alert system. A bird that stops singing can mean danger. A sudden silence can be a greater threat than a noise, the tigress doesn't explain. She lets the forest teach them with small doses of fear that don't kill, but educate. Day falls with the slowness of something heavy. Shadows lengthen. The jungle changes its shift. The tiger, now fully awake, moves toward the corridor it chose the night before. It doesn't repeat the exact same spot. It varies the ambush. Not because it fears being predictable to its prey, they don't think in terms of maps, but because the forest does register repetitions. A well-trodden path becomes a path with noise. A clearing too often visited becomes a clearing with memory. Night weaves its cloak once more, and with it, the logic of the ghost reawakens. The tiger doesn't enter the darkness, he becomes it. His body is an equation of shadow, muscle, and waiting. Japan, which during the day seems a cacophony of sounds, now becomes a chamber of stifled breaths. The tiger hears one of them, the most vulnerable, and he decides if today will be the day the forest once again revolves around his bite. Night has completely enveloped the Japan forest. But it is not a uniform darkness. It is a mesh of overlapping shadows, of black gaps between leaves that filter the moonlight, of pale reflections on the slow-moving river. In this fragmented landscape, the tiger does not move as a body occupying space, but as a minimal disruption of the air. Each step is measured so as not to break dry branches, so as not to betray the vibration of the ground. The forest seems to listen to him, but in reality, it is he who listens to the forest. The first trace arrives like a variation in the silence, a brief, almost imperceptible rustle, unlike the regular pattern of insects. The tiger stops. It lowers its body. Its breathing becomes slow, deep, so controlled that it doesn't cloud the cold air. In Chipan, sound isn't the only giveaway, scent is a signature. The tiger tilts its head to read the wind. There's a warm herbivore trail. It's not entirely fresh, but it's not old either. It's the kind of trail that promises return. It moves diagonally to the trail, not behind it. To pursue directly means to follow the path the prey already knows. To cut diagonally means to anticipate the point where fear will force the prey to seek cover. The tiger doesn't run. It risks making noise. It advances with a cadence that seems slow, but which actually reduces mistakes. The forest offers narrow passages between roots and fallen trunks. The tiger uses them as if someone had designed them for its body. In a brief clearing, the deer reappears. It's not still. It eats with the urgency of one who knows time is precious. The tiger stops at a distance that doesn't seem close, but it is. In Japan, distance is measured by the number of steps between the prey and cover. Here, cover is everywhere. One swift leap and the tiger can close the gap before the deer even realizes what's happening. But the tiger waits. The prey still has time to react. It waits for the deer to lower its head, for its attention to focus on the ground. The entire jungle seems to hold its breath. Then the tiger moves in 2 short bursts, barely lifting its body off the ground. It is not speed that kills first, it is surprise. The impact comes like a silent collapse. The prey tries to turn, but the tiger's weight has already broken its balance. The bite is not a gesture of fury, it is a precise technique to cut off the flow that sustains the struggle. The forest doesn't celebrate, the forest absorbs. The brief sound of the fall is lost among the leaves. The tiger drags its prey to a more secluded area. It doesn't eat immediately. First, it listens. A carcass attracts unseen eyes. The tiger waits for several long minutes. When it detects no approach, it begins to eat. There is no hurry. Food isn't always plentiful. Eating calmly is part of not wasting energy on unnecessary stress. At a distance, other inhabitants of the night sense the change in the air. Sleeping birds stir. A small carnivore changes course. They don't approach. The tiger's territory, marked by its presence, creates an invisible perimeter. The jungle is not ordered by fear, but by collective learning. Those who approached before and lost do not repeat the mistake. Elsewhere in the forest, the tigress hears the distant echo of movement. She doesn't identify the male's prey, but she recognizes the activity in the surrounding area. She adjusts her position around the den. The cubs sleep in a warm huddle. The tigress positions herself so that her body blocks the natural entrance. It's not a wall, but a promise of resistance. If anything approaches, she will be the first obstacle. Meanwhile, the river carries moonlight reflections. A fish breaks the surface. An amphibian emits a brief call. The forest rebalances itself after recent death. Energy shifts form. Where there was movement, now there is stillness. Where there was life in transit, now there are nutrients that will return to the soil. The tiger, having finished feeding, leaves no visible remains in the center of the clearing. It drags what's left to a more hidden place or covers it with leaves. Not out of modesty, but for territorial efficiency. Fewer signs, less competition. With a full stomach, the tiger moves to higher ground to rest. It doesn't sleep deeply. The predator's rest is a state of low vigilance. Its body temperature recovers. Its muscles relax enough to avoid exhaustion. In Chipan, fatigue is as dangerous an enemy as escaped prey. In the early morning, a brief rain falls without warning. It's not a long storm. It's a downpour that washes away recent scents, erases tracks, and confounds interpretations. The tiger takes advantage of this natural obliteration to change course. The jungle is once again left without clear maps. This suits him. Where there are no traces, the phantom is more believable. The rain awakens the cubs. The tigress licks them to soothe them. The scent of fresh water mingles with the aromas of the shelter. The mother knows that this cleansing of the forest is both an opportunity and a risk. An opportunity to move without leaving a trace. A risk because the prey also relocates. The game is reset. With the first hint of light, the tiger retreats once more into the dense forest. Day returns with its rustling leaves, the buzzing of insects, the passage of birds. The phantom dissolves into the tapestry of the forest, not because it disappears, but because Chipan once again takes center stage. The jungle resumes its ancient breathing, and the tiger integrated into it becomes once more a walking probability, a waiting calculation, a shadow that rules without proclaiming itself. Daylight returns to Chipan with an unforgiving light. It's not a gentle dawn, but a rapid rise in the heat that drives bodies toward the shade and decisions toward economic considerations. The tiger, satiated but not satisfied, retreats to a stretch of forest where the foliage forms an irregular canopy. There the air is denser, the ground retains moisture, and sounds are muffled. It's not about comfort, but about controlling the environment. The great predator doesn't seek open spaces when it doesn't need them. It seeks out areas where its presence fades away. In that damp corridor, the tiger pauses to drink from a trickle of water that meanders between moss-covered stones. It doesn't lower its head immediately. It observes the reflection. Surfaces in Chipan are deceptive. They appear still, but conceal minute vibrations. The tiger waits for the water to regain its regular pattern after a falling insect passes by. Then it drinks in small gulps without prolonging its exposure. In the forest, even a necessary gesture is a window of vulnerability. The morning progresses, and with it, the prey's routes are rearranged. Deer avoid dense corridors after their night hunt. They prefer edges with good visibility. Wild boars congregate in areas disturbed by the brief rain. Ground birds explore clearings where insects emerge with the warmth. The tiger reads these movements like a text being rewritten. He doesn't follow them now. He doesn't hunt with a weary body when he can hunt with a fresh one later. The strategy isn't heroic, it's mathematical. In the den, the tigress decides to move the cubs once again. It's not paranoia, it's adaptation. The scent of their recently eaten food might attract curious onlookers. Besides, the forest has changed with the rain. New scent trails open up, others close. The tigress chooses a higher refuge where the soil drains better and the insects are less dense. She carries each cub with the same patient ritual. Along the way, she avoids passing by the riverbank. The water concentrates in visible gazes. She prefers the labyrinth of roots. When the puppies arrive, they don't explore immediately. Exhaustion overcomes them. The tigress positions herself so that the wind carries scents toward her and not toward the den. The mother's body is an extended sensor. Every change in the air translates into a micro-adjustment of posture. There is no rest without constant monitoring of her surroundings. At the edge of his territory, the scent of another male appears as an intrusion. It's not recent, but it's not old either. The dominant tiger patrols the area with a gait that is neither hurried nor openly challenging. He marks discreetly. The mark is not just a warning, it's a reminder of his presence. In Chipan, the boundaries are fluid but not non-existent. A male who ignores the signals provokes conflicts that consume energy. Most encounters are resolved without fighting. The right scent in the right place is enough to prevent an escalation. However, there are days when negotiation fails. When two wills occupy the same space simultaneously, the forest hears sounds that don't belong to it: labored breathing, sharp blows, the scraping of large bodies against the vegetation. These confrontations are brief and decisive. They don't fight for honor, they fight for territorial efficiency. The victor doesn't celebrate. They are left with a map that now demands greater vigilance. The loser retreats to less productive edges, where survival becomes more costly. In the midday heat, Chipan enters an apparent stillness. Activity shrinks into shadows, sounds become spaced out. The tiger rests in a spot where the cool ground eases the weight of his body. He doesn't sleep deeply. His ears twitch, picking up the frequencies of the jungle. An abrupt silence is as informative as an unexpected noise. The predator learns to read both. In the distance, the river calls again with its constant murmur. The tiger doesn't answer. He knows that water holds both life and danger. He prefers to wait until the sun sets. Evening is the threshold where prey's mistakes become more likely. The day's fatigue clouds his attention. The tiger rises as the light begins to slant. He doesn't rush. He travels a stretch where the traces of dawn are still legible. He finds the promise of a repeated crossing. He memorizes the pattern. He doesn't act yet. The jungle shifts gears again. The heat subsides slightly. The insects alter their chorus. The shadows lengthen and the clearings become traps of contrast. The tiger positions itself where the vegetation creates a natural funnel. It doesn't need to run great distances. It needs its prey to position itself where the geometry of the forest is unfavorable. The phantom doesn't pursue. It orchestrates encounters. In the high den, the cubs awaken with the changing light. The tigress lets them play for a few short minutes. The play is not idleness. It is early physical training. Falling, getting up, judging minute distances between roots. Each clumsy mistake corrected now is one less mistake to pay for with blood later. The mother watches without interfering, except when a sound from the forest crosses a threshold only she recognizes. Then the game stops, and stillness reigns once more. Night approaches with the gentleness of a tide. The tiger settles into its shadowy rhythm. It doesn't roar. It doesn't need to announce itself. Chipan already knows it by its sudden absences, by the changes in the movement of prey, by the corridors that become more cautious. The phantom is not a visible presence. It is a disturbance in the forest's behavior. And in that disturbance, the tiger reigns without a throne, without a sound, without a name spoken aloud. Night falls on Chipan like a thick blanket that doesn't erase the contours, but rather renders them ambiguous. The jungle doesn't become silent, it changes its language. Insects raise a chorus of irregular pulses, frogs tap out rhythms in puddles left warm by the day, and the trees creak as their trunks cool. For the jaguar, this nocturnal language isn't noise, it's a real-time map. Every variation in rhythm indicates movement. Every sudden pause signals a potentially large presence. Every change in the wind's direction rewrites the geography of sense. The ghost of the forest moves without urgency. There is no race when the stage is not yet set. It advances along a strip where the ground retains the memory of the twilight prey's passage. It reads the weight of a deer by the depth of its tracks, the haste of a boar by the disordered leaves, the caution of an animal that has learned by the way it avoids clearings. The tiger does not memorize individuals, it memorizes patterns. In Chipan, patterns are the difference between expending energy and recovering it. The river, which during the day concentrated treacherous reflections, now becomes a black mirror. The tiger approaches along an edge where the vegetation breaks into discontinuous strips. It doesn't drink yet. First, it listens. The water carries with it the sound of bodies approaching to drink as the heat subsides. An antelope stops on the opposite bank, probes with its snout, takes a step back. The tiger doesn't cross. Crossing is a high-stakes gamble. It prefers that the edge of the forest do its work. The contrast between shadow and moon confuses anyone who looks inward. The phantom waits. Waiting is not absolute stillness, it is micro-adjustment. The tiger's body conforms to the slightest contours of the ground so that its breathing doesn't betray its bulk. Its tail acts as a counterweight. The muscles tense in a state that is neither full contraction nor relaxation, a threshold ready to break in a single direction. The prey at last commits the act that the jungle punishes. It lowers its head with a confidence that lasts less than a heartbeat. The attack is not a long run, it is a calculated leap from an angle that reduces escape to a belated reflex. On Chipan's night, speed is not measured in kilometers per hour, but in centimeters of error. The hunt ends quickly. There's no drama in efficiency. The tiger drags the carcass to a spot where the vegetation muffles the scent. Eating isn't an act of triumph. It's a task performed economically. The most energy-dense parts are consumed first. The rest remains as a trail that the forest will redistribute. Insects, small scavengers, invisible fungi, all participate in the distribution. The ghost doesn't clear the scene. It lets the system close the scene. Higher up, the tigress cautiously leaves the den. She doesn't stray far. She hunts smaller prey when the opportunity arises. She doesn't compete with the male. She occupies temporary niches that the forest offers on different nights. Motherhood in Chipan isn't a suspension of hunting. It's a redefinition of risk. The tigress prefers prey that doesn't require her to pursue long distances. Every kilometer away from the den is a kilometer where the cubs are left alone facing a world that doesn't compromise. The cubs, meanwhile, awaken to the nocturnal language as their backdrop. They don't yet understand the nuances, but they learn the value of stillness through imitation. The tigress returns with the scent of her prey on her nose. She doesn't carry her body to the den. It's best not to attract attention. The little ones receive fragments, learning to bite, to pull, to coordinate legs that aren't yet fully obedient. Learning is tactile before it is conceptual. The forest is taught through the body. Dawn advances, and with it, the shifts in activity change. Some prey retreat, others emerge. The tiger moves toward a corridor where the wind carries scents from a drier hillside. There, the vegetation is less dense, clearings alternating with patches of shadow. The phantom chooses a strip where the contrast renders it invisible. It doesn't chase shadows, it waits for bodies that betray themselves with the sounds of their own activity. A rustling of leaves too rhythmic, a breath that quickens after a stumble, a silence that suddenly falls when something large realizes it is not alone. The jungle responds to each death with a subtle reorganization. Prey routes shift from night to night, clearings become unwelcome, edges become safe for a few hours. The tiger doesn't impose constant fear, it imposes an uncertainty that forces recalculation. That recalculation is its domain. The ghost rules not by the number of bodies it leaves behind, but by the way the forest learns to move again. Toward dawn, the air cools a little more. The tiger seeks a high spot where the ground drains well and the wind dissipates any sense that might betray its rest. It lies down, remaining alert. The predator's sleep is a low-intensity vigilance. Its eyelids close intermittently, but its ears continue mapping its surroundings. An unusual noise would fully awaken it, but none comes. Night yields its turn to day without incident. With the first light, Chipan rewrites its territory. The tracks become more visible, but also older. The jaguar moves toward an area where the foliage filters the sunlight in irregular patterns. It avoids the clearings of dawn. At that time of day, the jungle is full of eyes. It prefers corridors where its mass is broken into fragments. It drinks from a puddle left by the night in a depression in the ground. It doesn't prolong its exposure. It cleans its muzzle with its tongue, erases scents, reorganizes its presence. The Chipan forest is not a neutral stage. It is an organism of relationships where every gesture resonates. The tiger is not a tyrant imposing its law on a void. It is a node of strength in a network that responds. When the phantom walks, the jungle learns. When it stops, the jungle remembers. Hunting is not a disruption of the balance. It is an oscillation that keeps the network alive. Without that pulse, the system overflows. Too many prey in one corridor, too much pressure on one edge, too much accumulated fragility. Throughout the season, the tiger adjusts its internal map. There are nights when the river is generous, others when it's a theater of risks. There are weeks when the deer become cautious and the wild boars make mistakes. The ghost doesn't stick to a fixed routine. Routine is a trap. It prefers repetition with variation, habit with disruption. In Chipan, whoever repeats themselves becomes visible. The tiger's memory is spatial. It remembers trees where the bark muffles the sound, roots where the ground gives way without creaking, clearings where the wind betrays. It also remembers defeats, prey that escaped by a meter, a leap miscalculated by a hidden branch. These memories don't weigh like guilt, they weigh like facts. The efficient predator accumulates data and discards myths. In the distance, human sounds are non-existent. Chipan remains a space where the jungle dictates its rhythms. The jaguar is one of its deepest voices, but not the only one. The forest speaks in insects, in fungi that grow where blood has fallen, in birds that change perches. The ghost does not monopolize the language, it intones it. As another night falls, the cycle prepares to repeat itself with minimal variations. The tiger rises when the air shifts once more. There is no hurry, no announcement. The moving shadow does not seek to be seen. It seeks to make the forest move differently after its passage. And in that altered movement, in that choreography that is rewritten each day, the ghost of the Chipan forest confirms its silent reign, not by the force it displays, but by the way its presence reorganizes life around it without needing to utter its name.